I never believed the stories when I was younger. My grandmother used to sit by the window on humid nights, whispering tales of La Llorona, the weeping woman who stole children and dragged the living into her watery grave. To me, it was only folklore, something parents used to frighten children into obedience. But now, in the silence of my own home, I can hear her crying, and I know the stories weren't warnings for children, they were warnings for me. The crying began faint, barely more than a trickle of sound carried by the wind. At first, I thought it was a neighbor or a stray animal, something ordinary. But the longer I listened, the more wrong it felt. It wasn't just sadness, it was hollow, bottomless grief, as though it poured from a wound that could never heal. The sobs would swell, then fade, always lingering just beyond the walls of my room. I tried ignoring it. I told myself it was the creak of old pipes, or maybe a passing storm. Yet every night, when the clock in my hallway struck midnight, the crying returned. It came closer each time, pressing against my windows like rain that never fell. I started waking in the dark, heart pounding, convinced I wasn't alone. And one night, when I dared to look outside, I saw her. She stood by the tree line at the edge of my yard, dressed in white that glowed faintly against the dark. Her hair hung in tangled ropes, dripping though there was no rain. She didn't move. She only wept into her hands, shoulders shaking with a sorrow that seemed to bleed into the ground around her. I blinked, and she was gone. But the grass, where she stood, remained wet, slick, as though a river had passed through. Since then, I've felt her everywhere. In the hush of the hallway, in the cold that seeps into my sheets, in the mirrors that ripple when I pass. I dream of her every night, though I no longer know if I'm dreaming or living through something borrowed. Always the river. Always the children's screams. Always her face contorted in grief before it twists into rage. When I wake, my pillow is damp with tears I don't remember shedding. I tried telling a friend once. He laughed, told me it was sleep paralysis or stress. "You need rest," he said. "But how do you rest when you're hunted? How do you sleep when every time you close your eyes, you wake to the sound of water lapping at your door?" That night, I heard her cry again, only this time it was inside my house. The walls groaned as though something heavy leaned against them. I held my breath, frozen in the dark, straining to hear. The crying swelled, then broke into a wail so sharp I thought the glass in my windows would shatter. My body trembled uncontrollably, and for a moment I thought I saw her shadow pass beneath the crack of my bedroom door. When I gathered the courage to open it, there was nothing, only wet footprints leading down the hall. I followed them, though every step felt like walking toward a cliff's edge. The footprints glistened on the hardwood, vanishing into the bathroom. The door was ajar, steam curling from within, though no water had been running. When I pushed it open, I saw the sink overflowing, water spilling over the edge in thick streams. My reflection in the mirror rippled, distorting into her face, mouth open, eyes hollow. I stumbled back, and the glass shattered. Shards rained across the tile, but when I looked again, the mirror was whole. My face looked back at me, pale and shaken, with nothing out of place. The water had stopped. The sink was dry. I wanted to believe I'd imagined it, but I knew better. The faint smell of algae clung to my skin, and the floor was still wet beneath my feet. Every story says she comes for children, but I have no children. I live alone, and there's no one else for her to take. Unless she isn't here for children anymore. Unless she's learned to take whatever she wants, whenever she wants it. Perhaps the crying is only a lure, and I've already been caught in her grasp without realizing. I began to research, combing through old articles, archived news reports, forum threads buried in corners of the internet, stories of people hearing her cries far from rivers, of families waking to find their children drowned in bathtubs, of men disappearing after nights filled with weeping echoes. Some posts stopped abruptly, mid-sentence, as if the writers had been silenced. One ended with words that chilled me. "She doesn't need rivers anymore. S01E04. That line stayed with me. It made me wonder, what if the stories of rivers and lakes were only the beginning? Maybe the water isn't the source, but the doorway, and any reflection, any droplet, could be her path. That thought gnaws at me whenever I take a shower, whenever I drink a glass of water. Sometimes, I swear I see her face in the ripples. Sometimes, the water tastes like salt, like tears. The more I try to resist, the more she presses in. I hear her outside my door at night, whispering in a language I don't understand. Once, I woke to find my window open, the curtains soaked as though rain had poured in. But the sky was clear. My neighbor told me the next morning she saw a woman in white standing at my window, her hands pressed against the glass. "I thought she was visiting you," she said. I didn't tell her that my room is on the second floor. The isolation has become unbearable. Friends no longer visit, and neighbors look at me with pity and unease. They know something is wrong. They hear the cries, too, though they won't admit it. Children cross the street rather than pass my gate, muttering rhymes about La Llorona under their breath. The house itself feels abandoned, though I still walk its halls. The silence is not silence anymore. It is whitened. Last night was the worst yet. I woke to water dripping onto my forehead. When I opened my eyes, I was staring up at the ceiling, where droplets fell steadily from nowhere, pooling on my pillow. I turned, and she was there, sitting in the corner of my room. Her veil clung to her face, but I could see the darkness beneath it, the hollow where her eyes should be. She lifted her head slowly, and the crying stopped. For a moment there was nothing but silence. Then she whispered my name, in a voice that wasn't hers but my mother's. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. I shut my eyes tight, praying it was a dream. When I opened them again, the corner was empty, but the sheets beneath me were soaked as though I'd been pulled from a river. I am unraveling. Sleep is impossible, and waking is worse. My hands shake when I touch water. My reflection no longer feels like mine. I caught myself whispering to her once, answering her cries with words I didn't say. Sometimes I feel her grief inside me, twisting, pushing me toward the riverbank near town. I've stood there at dawn, staring into the rushing water, half expecting her hands to break the surface and drag me in. Maybe that's what she wants. Said I go willingly. I no longer trust my own senses. Days blur together, and I can't tell whether I'm awake or dreaming. The crying is seeped into the daylight now, faint but persistent, like a background hum that never fades. Sometimes, when I'm walking down the street, I hear it echo from storm drains or from the mouths of strangers passing me by. I try to focus, to ground myself, but their lips don't move even as the sound pours out. The mirrors are the worst. My reflection lags behind, blinking too late, smiling when I do not. Sometimes, her face overlays mine, eyes black and streaming with tears, mouth pulled wide in silent despair. Once, I smashed the mirror above the sink, but shards still show glimpses of her when I walk past. I've taped over every reflective surface in the house, but even water holds her image. I can't drink without choking on it. Food tastes like river silt. Bread crumbles into ash in my mouth. Fruit collapses into rot. The moment I touch it, I can feel myself growing thinner, weaker, but hunger barely registers anymore. It's replaced by annoying grief, not my own, but hers. Sometimes, in the quiet, I find myself clutching my chest, sobbing without knowing why. My tears taste of salt, heavy and endless, as though I'm crying her tears for her. I think she wants me hollowed out, an empty vessel for her sorrow. The thought strikes me at odd moments, when I catch my reflection in a car window or see a shadow move across the wall. I feel her grief slide inside, stretching through my ribs like water flooding a sinking ship. I no longer know if the grief is hers or if it's becoming mine. Maybe that's how she survives. I've stopped answering the phone. The calls come from numbers I don't recognize, each one beginning with static before dissolving into crying. When I unplugged the phone, I heard it ring anyway, muffled, as if coming from inside the walls. I put my ear to the plaster and heard children screaming under the surface, their voices bubbling as though drowned. I clawed at the wall until my fingernails split, but found only dust. Sleep comes in fragments. I awake in strange places: on the bathroom floor, in the yard, once at the edge of the river with mud caked under my nails. My shoes are often soaked, my clothes damp with water that smells of algae and decay. I have no memory of walking there, but I always wake facing the river, as though my body moves without me. She is leading me somewhere, step by step, night by night. I found bruises on my arms, shaped like fingers pressing down too hard. My wrists ache as if bound, though there are no marks of rope. In the shower, I feel hands pushing against my back, holding me under, though when I turn, there's only the curtain swaying gently. The water in the tub sometimes rises on its own, filling even when the drain is open, lapping at the edge as if waiting for me to slip beneath. I stand there, hypnotized, tempted. Neighbors avoid me now. I see them whispering at their windows, watching me with suspicion or fear. Children who once played nearby now point at me from a distance, their mouths moving in silent chants. I can't hear. One boy threw a stone at my window, shouting, "She's already got you," before running away. I wanted to chase him, to ask what he meant, but my body froze. Maybe I already know the answer. I found an old newspaper in the library archives about a family not far from here. The article said their 2 children drowned in their bathtub while the parents slept. Authorities called it an accident, but the mother swore she heard crying before it happened, crying that echoed through the pipes. Another article, decades older, described a man vanishing after claiming a woman in white followed him home. His body was never found, only his shoes at the edge of the canal. The pattern is clear once she marks you. She never lets go. Now I hear her crying inside my head, not just outside. It swells at random, making my vision blur and my ears ring. Sometimes, when it peaks, I black out, waking hours later with no memory of what I've done. I found my journal covered in words I don't remember writing. Soyela scrawled over and over in jagged lines. I don't speak Spanish, but I know enough to understand. I amir. I've started avoiding water entirely, but it doesn't matter. She finds new ways, and I woke once to find condensation dripping from the ceiling, each droplet falling onto my face. When I tried to wipe it away, my hands came back streaked with tears, not water. Another time, I heard my own voice whispering in the drain, begging me to come closer. I leaned in despite myself, and for a moment, I saw her eyes staring back from the dark. I can't tell if she's outside of me anymore. Sometimes I hear myself weeping, though I don't feel tears. Sometimes I see children in the corners of my vision, standing in puddles that vanish when I blink. My body feels borrowed, as if I'm walking through someone else's skin. I've begun to wonder if La Llorona isn't haunting me at all. Maybe she's becoming me. Tonight, the crying is unbearable. It fills every room, rising like floodwaters, pressing against my skull. I sit in the center of the house with every light on, but shadows still gather, stretching across the floor like water creeping closer. My reflection in the dark window doesn't move when I do. She's smiling now, and her lips form the words, "I know I hear when the lights go out. Ven conmigo." I don't know how much longer I can resist. The river is calling. The pipes are singing. The house itself is drowning, and I am drowning with it. When I close my eyes, I see her arms outstretched, not in rage, but in welcome, as though she is waiting for me to take her hand. Perhaps that is the only way the crying will stop. The floor is wet beneath me now, though no water runs. My hands are trembling, my chest tight with sorrow that feels endless. I hear children outside, chanting softly, their voices carrying through the night. La Llorona, La Llorona. The lights are flickering, and I can see her shape forming in the corner, tall and draped in white, face hidden behind the veil. She's closer than ever. If I go to her, maybe this ends. If I resist, maybe I lose my mind entirely. The choice doesn't feel like mine anymore. Her grief is inside me, pumping through my blood, weighing every breath. I'm sinking into her. The crying has stopped. StayScared.